Hi everyone, Vincent here, and I'm sure you can tell instantly that I'm struggling to speak. But if you can put up with my voice being this way, please keep listening, because today's podcast is very important, and I decided to do it on the subject that I am, due to the fact that I'm struggling to speak. When I say you need this to get your ex back, I'm of course not referring to a terrible voice. I'm of course not referring to a cold. What I am in fact referring to is resilience and the effort to keep moving forward and improving every single day. Now, it would have been very, very easy for me to not release a podcast today. It would have been incredibly easy for me to decide, look, my voice is terrible. Nobody's going to want to listen. I can't get across the facts I want to. So I'm just going to give up and not release a podcast. But I've released a podcast on a Monday for so long now that I wanted, with every last breath, to be able to try and get across something to you which could potentially be useful, positive, maybe even something for you to hold on to. Now, like I said, I'm talking about resilience and the fact that even though sometimes it's easy to do nothing or to do something differently, which might not necessarily be as effective, what I would say is with every ounce of your being, you need to do something positive. Now, I like to believe that releasing a podcast can help people. I'm hoping that at least one person today is listening and feeling the help and support of my words, and therefore for me, this is worth it. Now, I'm not saying that I could have released this podcast if I felt much worse than I already do. Okay, we have to use our common sense. But what I'm trying to get across here is if you have anything left in your being, you need to use it in a positive way. So when we're trying to connect this to getting an ex back, you've got to realise that there are going to be many rocky roads ahead of you. Bumpy roads are commonplace. Even though you might have a good day today potentially, unfortunately, tomorrow might not feel as good. You've got to realise that the bad days are temporary. You've got to understand that to move through your dark, bleak tunnel, you've got to do just that. You've got to move. If you stand still, you will not be able to get out the other side. You've got to keep moving forward. And that is what you need to do to get your ex back. Now, getting your ex back isn't about chasing them. When I say doing something, I'm not talking about finding your energy to go to where they live and knock on their door. I'm not talking in that respect. I'm speaking about dusting yourself down when you feel like you don't have any energy left and pushing forward, living your life to the full. Now, there's going to be many days, unfortunately, where you can't be bothered. There might be days where you don't even want to get out of bed. But what I'm here to tell you is that you need to. Because for you to try and get your ex back, you've got to showcase yourself as a version 2.0, and certainly not as a version 0.5. If you're version 0.5, you can't get your ex back, because if you consider it, you're actually in a worse position than when they dumped you. Now, nobody wants to think about the time they were dumped, why they were dumped, the reasoning behind it, but it's important that you do, and that you recognise there are certain things that your ex-dumper did not feel was connecting with them correctly at that time. They were not feeling fulfilled. They were not feeling satisfied or confident that this future with you was going to be the best option for them. And that is why they ended the relationship. Now, I'm not talking about you beating yourself up every single day, but I am speaking about accountability. Looking at what went wrong, understanding your role in it, and recognising what you can do to change it. And this is where version 2.0 comes into play. But if you become a version 2.0, you're going to be alleviating and removing and changing those negative elements which unfortunately contributed to your breakup. Now, if instead you regress to a version 0.5, then unfortunately, you're going to be in that worse position than when you were dumped. So you were dumped at version 1. If you behave in a way which is even less attractive, less appealing, then you're not going to get your ex back, because version 1 isn't going to get your ex back. Version 1, unfortunately, is no longer compatible with your ex. So version 0.5 certainly isn't going to get them back. And this is where the resilience comes into play. Because you're going to wake up some days with very little energy, very little desire. But you need to be pushing forward and growing into that version 2.0. Now, as I said a moment ago, this isn't about beating yourself up. This isn't about being cruel and harsh on yourself. This is about recognizing your role. Now, your ex-Badumper also had a role in this, quite a major one. And I'm not here to say that they were perfect. I'm saying to the contrary. They likely played a role in this breakup because they're not perfect. They're not perfect, you're not perfect, and I'm not perfect. And once we understand this, we have a better chance of getting an ex back. Because things need to change, but you can only control the controllables. You can only do your part of this. You can only change the elements that you're able to change. You can't change your ex. And interestingly enough, most dumpers don't go through the growth that dumpees do. You know, the amount of times I've had audio coaching clients who are dumpees, and they tell me that eventually, at some point in the future, likely to be 6 to 12 months down the line, their ex has reached out to them, but surprisingly to them, surprisingly to the dumpee, they now no longer want to pursue a reconnection. And this is a shock to them because probably up until this very point, they thought that rainbows came out of the backside of their former partner. You know what I'm saying? They believed that up until this point, for many, many months, that their ex was the most incredible person, the best person, the only person they wanted in their life. And yet now, they've finally spoken to their dumper in a long, long time, and they realise that they've outgrown their ex. Because most dumpees do. Most dumpees who live their life to the full become a version 2.0. And if and when they do, when their ex reaches out, and of course, you know, I have to say this, sadly, not all dumpers will reach out, but I do believe that in a lot of instances they will. So let's just say when your dumper reaches out, you might find that they've not gone through the growth that you have. People, human beings as a whole, we are likely to go through growth when we're experiencing pain. When people aren't experiencing as much pain, they're less likely to find the motivation for growth. So your ex-Badumper is not going through the same pain as you. Yes, they've likely felt the breakup in a negative sense, just as you did. However, you're going to feel it a lot worse than them, because the decision was taken out of your hands. So even if your ex-Badumper did not enjoy the breakup, which most dumpers don't want to hurt their dumpees, they wouldn't have enjoyed this. Sadly, for you, we have to understand that they've not gone through the same negativity as you did. You know, this is something that you've experienced, whereas the dumper likely hasn't. But as I've just said, on the flip side of this, your ex-Badumper has not had the motivation to grow. So if and when they reach out to you, this is when you can see that you have likely outgrown them. And then you have a choice. This is when I always say a dumpee has a situation which is win-win. You can either get your ex back, or you can find somebody even better. Because if at this moment you uncover and discover that your ex-Badumper is not the person that you want to continue your life journey with, you can now find somebody even better than them. Once you recognise your version 2.0, they're still version 1, you have that choice. Maybe you still want to go through reconnection with them, or perhaps you decide, you know what, I can find better, I deserve better, and even though I was dreaming about my ex for many, many months, I no longer want to be with them. So at this stage, you have that choice, and that's where the win-win comes in. But none of this is possible unless you become version 2.0. Now, it's interesting. When I release podcasts about self-improvement, they often bomb. You know, if I release a podcast which has a title talking about self-improvement, it will likely be listened to probably about a quarter of the times of if I release a podcast speaking about getting an ex back. However, the two are absolutely linked. Because if you want to try to get your ex back, you need to go through that self-improvement. Because if you don't become version 2.0. So for the people who want their ex back but refuse to listen to podcasts and videos and advice by me and other people, suggesting self-improvement, I do think you're trying to move forward with one arm tied behind your back. You're not allowing yourself the best chance of trying to get your ex back because you're not necessarily going through that self-improvement. If you're not wanting to listen to the advice, support and motivation to do so, you're a lot less likely to actually grow to that new version of yourself. So my advice to you is please keep growing. Please keep improving and recognize what I've been speaking about today is all connected to resilience. As I said at the beginning of today's podcast, it would have been very easy for me feeling the way I do, with my voice the way it is, to not upload a podcast today. But I want to try and help people, and if I can help just one person today, then it's been worthwhile. Similarly, you need to dig deep inside of you and recognize that you need to push forward. You need to do what you need to do, even if you don't feel like doing it. You've probably woken up today and sadly, you're probably not feeling your best. Because if you're going through a breakup, you're very unlikely to be feeling top of the world. Even if you're having a good day, like I said earlier, tomorrow, sadly, might not be. So hold in your heart and recognize that these negative days are bumps in the road. They are temporary. They don't last forever, and you will get through this. But when you do feel a bit better, this is when you need to make hay whilst the sun shines. I dropped a podcast a while ago speaking on that concept of doing what you can do when you can do it. Because as a dumpee, you're going to have days where even with the best will in the world, even with all of the motivation that I try to give you, just getting through the day and being somewhat productive in your general life, that will be all you can manage. I'm speaking about the days when you do feel a bit better. Maybe that is today, maybe it will be tomorrow, but when you do feel a little bit better, a little bit happier, a little bit more focused, this is when you've got to do your thing. You've got to make hay whilst the sun shines. When you have that opportunity, when the world feels a little happier, a little bit more positive, you've got to be productive. And being productive in this instance means you living your life in a way where you become a version 2.0, becoming a better person today than you were yesterday, a better person tomorrow than you are currently today. Joining new classes, groups and clubs, making new connections, even going on dates. These are the things which can increase the chance of getting your ex back because you showcase yourself as a dateable individual with improved skills, knowledge, abilities, courage even, that your ex didn't realise that you had. You must do this for you, not for your ex. The byproduct of this will be hopefully hearing from your ex again and one day having that choice that I'm speaking about, where you can decide if you want your ex back or not. But you must be doing this for you, because there is no guarantees. I can't guarantee you that you'll get your ex back. I can't guarantee you that you'll hear from your ex again. But what I can say is if you do this for you, this is where the win-win comes in. If you don't get them back, you will find somebody even better. Now, if you would want one-on-one support with me, if you want advice on how to try and increase the chance of getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website, www.dateme.tips, for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So please let me know in the YouTube comments how you feel today and whether this podcast has been worth my broken voice and whether it has given you a boost, because I really hope it has. Understand that negative days are temporary and remember that with or without your ex, you will have a positive future. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.